Alright, so what I have right here, there's a black tar mastic over my subfloor in the kitchen laundry room. There was linoleum over this. It had asbestos in it, so I had it abated by a company. The black mastic here was tested for asbestos and came back negative, so that's something I'm going to remove on my own. This black mastic will not come off the subfloor. It's next to impossible to scrape it off or use any other type solvents that I know to make it come off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a circular saw and I'm going to cut out this entire subfloor in the kitchen and the laundry room. In my house right now, there's 2 layers of subfloor on top of the wooden joists. I'm just going to cut out the top layer. It looks to me like the top layer of the subfloor was about 5/8 inch thick. So I'm going to set my circular saw to that height and cut out just the top subfloor in little small sections and take a crowbar and pry up each piece. You can see over here, I've actually already cut out a section in the laundry room. Underneath the top layer of subfloor, there was a type of asphalt felt paper between the layers of the subfloor. I stopped sawing when I found it, and I had that tested for asbestos as well, because felt paper from the 50s and 60s when this floor was laid sometimes had asbestos. Thankfully it came back negative, so I have no more problems there. So today, before I go to work, in the next 2 hours, I'm going to cut out another section of the kitchen, and I'm going to move my way all the way until I get to the living room and dining room. And then once I get all the flooring cut out, I'm going to replace it with a new plywood or advantech type subfloor. I got to do more research into that. One thing I don't know right now is whether I'm going to glue the top layer to the second layer of the subfloor. The previous owners or people who installed this floor did not do that. They just laid the second layer of plywood on the first one but put the felt paper between it. I'm not sure if they did that as a moisture barrier or they did that to kind of dampen sounds from people walking or squeaking between the boards. That's also something I'm going to research a little more and decide if I'm going to glue it or not. A coworker of mine really recommended gluing it, but yet to be determined if I'm going to go that route or not. All right, so now to cut out the subfloor, the next step I'm going to do is obviously get the saw and extension cord, but one thing you definitely want to do, and you don't want to be that kind of person that doesn't do it, is you want to have PPE for using a circular saw. Once you cut up this stuff, there's going to be a lot of sawdust in the air. I'll bring it up so you can see me. All right, so what we got right here, you're going to want earring protection because your hearing is important. You don't want to be the guy who can't hear anything when you're old. I have a few coworkers like that who shot a lot of weapons without wearing hearing protection, and now they can't hear anything. You want goggles so you don't have all the dust get in your eyes, because trust me, that is no fun. And probably most importantly, I would say you want to get a respirator that's rated for a 100 filter on the NIOSH rating. I have the 3M company type mask. Basically, that will block out 99.97% of all particles in the air, so you don't breathe them. You don't want those in your lungs. Long-term exposure can definitely lead to increased risk of cancer or other disease. It's not worth it. Trying to be macho and not wearing a mask is only hurting yourself. It's not making the problem go away because you won't acknowledge it. I'm making this video in 2021 where there's an ongoing viral pandemic related to SARS, COVID number 2 or something. And I live in the United States. And a lot of people here in Florida don't like wearing masks just for that. But in the future, I'm sure future generations will have good judgments on us about that, but that's a separate topic. All right, so I'm going to grab the saw, the extension cord, and put on my PPE, and I'm going to get going. probably not going to be able to talk much with a loud saw. And I'm going to also open all the windows. I have all the doors closed. The kitchen and laundry room is sealed off. I also put a fan on the window. I'm going to turn that on to help blow out most of the sawdust outside. You definitely want to do what I did as well. Remove everything you can from the kitchen and cover most things up, because that sawdust, it's going to go everywhere. It's going to be a pain. If you were really ambitious with trying to stop the sawdust, you could probably put plastic sheets over your stove or anywhere else the dust might get into. I might actually end up doing that since I have some plastic, but
So this right here, this is the test results for the asbestos for both the black mastic and the asphalt felt paper. So here you can see it has a NAD for both materials, has a no asbestos detected. If you have black mastic or any old flooring in your house, linoleum, sheet tile, whatever it may be, especially before, I would say, the 1990s, get it tested for asbestos before you start disturbing it. My house, actually, I had it tested, linoleum. The contractor told me it was fine. I started digging it up, found out later that there was asbestos, so I would just treat all material, old material, with high caution like it has asbestos. So here I'm showing you the actual speed I was using the circular saw to make the cuts. I'm going to speed it up more after this part of the video because it's just going to take so long. But basically you always want to be beside the saw. You never want to be in front of it or behind it in case it gets stuck and kickback. It kicks back, you don't want it to go into you because that'll cut you up pretty good. You always want to make sure you have two hands on the saw at all times. That way there's no way your hand can get in the blade and get cut. A circular saw blade cut will put you in the hospital. If not, you might lose an extremity on that or a finger. Right here I sped things up a little bit just to make it go by quicker. What I did was essentially cut out squares. I did lines in the vertical direction and in the horizontal direction. Move the stove there to do the cutting. After I did all the cutting, what I would do is I would take a crowbar and pry up all the pieces. And as I pried up the pieces, one thing you want to do is you want to knock the nails flat so they're not a hazard to poke anybody stepping in it or picking them up. I also vacuum as I go just so the sawdust doesn't keep going everywhere. And again, as always, you want to make sure you're wearing your mask.
alright, as we can see here, I had a little bit of trouble getting the plywood out from underneath the door frame on this side with the door, and the other side where the door closes up against the frame. So I'm going to try using a perforating saw this time to see if I can cut out closer to the frame and pull it out. And that's what I'm going to do now.
Here, the weight of the door was actually holding this piece down, so mostly it wasn't. There were some nails that were hard to get out of it, and that was part of the problem. But then I just took a hammer and knocked it free.
Alright, so here you can see there's some of the subfloor next to the cabinets. Since I'm not removing the cabinets, I gotta cut the subfloor as close to the cabinets as possible to get it flush so the new subfloor will fit nice against the cabinets. The circular saw will not cut that close to it because it has a safety guard, and as you can see, that's as close as it would get. It was maybe like 2 inches or so from the actual cabinet. So from here I'll take a multi-tool and try to cut it as close to the cabinet as I can and make it as straight and clean as possible, and that's what I'm going to do now.
So here, it was pretty easy to cut out because the cabinet wasn't in the way of me making the cuts with the multi-tool. So it just took a little bit of figuring out before I found my routine. I marked with a permanent marker the actual height on the blade so I knew it didn't cut down into the lower level of the subfloor. And then I tried prying it up a little bit with the pry bar. This is where it was a pain. To get underneath the cabinet with the multi-tool, I had to cut out each little section because the whole tool wouldn't fit to cut it sideways. Other people that have a larger gap, they could use a toe kick saw to cut it out, and that would be much, much easier. Unfortunately for me, there was no toe kick saw I could find that would fit underneath the cabinets to cut out the subfloor. So this was a very long, tedious part of the project where I had to saw out the subfloor underneath the cabinets, one little section at a time. Eventually I do get it done though, but also when you're using a multi-tool, you want to make sure you wear gloves and grip the thing as lightly as possible while still holding it safely, because the vibrations, especially if you're using it long term, can really mess up your hand. My hands felt like tingly for a day or two after doing this, and I even tried to take many breaks while doing it.
So this is the final result of removing the top layer of the subfloor. The first layer of subfloor is this wooden slat sitting at a 45-degree angle on top of the joist. It goes from all the way to the laundry room, throughout the kitchen, and there's some of like tar left over from that felt paper, but not a big deal. And then see, there's the cabinets. I took the multi-tool and cut it as close as possible. It pretty much is flush with the cabinets after I did all that cutting. It was tedious. That was the hardest part, I would say, was using the multi-tool and cutting the subfloor flush with the cabinets.
Something else I also did was some of the slats didn't have any nails or they were loose, so I took number 8 wood screws. I believe they were like an inch and a half or so, and I drilled those into the planks to make the subfloor more secure, because this one was moving a bit. This one looked like it wasn't even nailed at all. I don't know why, but I screwed that one in. So that's something that you want to make sure going forward, is that this is level as can be and no slats are loose. That when I put the next layer of plywood on top of it, it'll be nice and level and flat.